Welcome to the Trevor Meyer Show. I'm Trevor Meyer, and today we are going to rank the Mission Impossible films. Now, as with my previous video, I'm going to try for minimal editing this time. Just going to blast right through it. This is going to be full spoilers. I want to have a real discussion here, so I don't want to, just tiptoe around all of the things that happen in the newest one, which is The Final Reckoning. So I just want to be able to have a full, honest discussion about all of these films. So, that being said, full spoilers. If you don't want it spoiled, don't watch this movie until you've seen the ones you want to see. All right, so, number 8, Mission Impossible 2. This is in last place. It used to be one of my favorites. Okay, when there were only 2 Mission Impossible movies, it was my favorite of the 2. Okay, so when I was in high school and I found this movie for the first time, I did not understand how the world worked. I didn't know how people talked to each other. I didn't know how relationships worked. I didn't know how physics worked. So when I watched Mission Impossible 2, I took it completely seriously. I thought, I buy that, of course. This is how it works. This is life. And as an adult, many, many years later, decades later even, I go back and I look at Mission Impossible 2, and now I do know how people talk, and I do know how physics works, and I do know what real life relationships are like, and I'm like, this is laughable, but it does fall into the so bad it's good category. It's literally laughable. It's taking itself seriously, and I am laughing out loud at parts that they did not intend for me to laugh out loud, okay? So, a lot of ghouls, a lot of cool mask stuff in this movie. Probably the most face swapping we get in a Mission Impossible movie. This was before they made sense of where the masks came from and how they work, because I'm confused about, does he just have a mask of everybody? How can he just whip one out impromptu like that? There's no logic here. It doesn't make any sense. So, pretty much you can completely ignore this movie in the overall series. The only thing that carries over into a future movie is we know that Ethan is good at rock climbing without any gear, which pays off in Fallout. But that's about it. Other than that, nothing pays off. The action's pretty good. It's mostly relegated to the second half. And yeah, at the time it was really cool. It was, it was a peak early 2000s action film. It was maybe influenced by The Matrix, although it maybe came out a little too close to The Matrix for there to be any influence. Maybe it was just a coincidence, but definitely has kind of that Charlie's Angels vibe to it where, Die Another Day, the kind of silly action movies that they were doing in the early 2000s. But, it's all right. It's kind of cool in its cheesy way. Number 7. This is kind of a bummer. I'm sorry, people. The Final Reckoning. Number 7, The Final Reckoning. I was hoping for more with this one. I thought there was an opportunity, especially with it being 3 hours long, for it to really land. Land the plane? Is there a phrase for this? Stick the landing. Land the plane. He's not so good at that part. He just jumps out of them and they crash. So I was really hoping they would stick the landing better than they did. And for 3-hour runtime, I thought it could have pulled off something like No Time to Die, which some people are, middling on No Time to Die. I think it's the perfect James Bond film. I think it's the best of all the James Bond films. You can fight me on that. That's fine. I understand. But for me, it works on every level. And I thought Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning would do that. And it didn't, really. It's not very fun. It's not very light or happy. There's not a lot of humor. There's not a lot of teamwork in it, which, it kind of bums me out. With the way that the Mission Impossible kind of peaked, it had a lot more going on in terms of entertainment. Now, Final Reckoning has a different style going on. It's more like a Tom Clancy movie, like Hunt for Red October or something like that, Patriot Games. And it doesn't have very much fun with it. It's very serious. It's very dark. It's kind of realistic. There's an evil computer It's kind of realistic. Uh, and it's got a kind of a Terminator vibe to it, kind of a Jack Ryan vibe to it. And Ethan's alone for most of the movie. And I miss the team aspect of it. I appreciate what they were trying to do by making it a more grounded spy thriller. And other people that I saw it with who were not caught up on the Mission Impossible series, and one of whom hasn't seen a single Mission Impossible movie ever, went to see The Final Reckoning, and they really enjoyed it. And maybe they just don't know what the best of Mission Impossible looks like and what I was expecting to see in it. But yeah, it didn't stick the landing the way I was hoping it would. And in the end, again, spoilers. Apparently, they screened two different versions of the film, one of which Ethan dies, and the other one he lives. And they went with which one tested better, and they went with the version where he lived. I was really hoping that they would kill him off. There are a whole bunch of franchises where they kill off the main character now. I don't want to name them all because I don't want to spoil all of them for you, but just think about it. Think about some of the movies you've seen in the action slash maybe comic book genre, and you'll realize it's become more and more common recently for the lead character to die in the final film in the series. So I thought they would do that this time. They didn't, so I'm thinking, of course they're probably going to make another one, which is fine. I think it'll have to be different. I kind of thought they would make another one anyway. I just didn't think that Tom Cruise would be involved. At least not as an actor. I thought maybe a producer or something. But yeah, it didn't pay off the stuff that I was waiting to find out about with Dead Reckoning. Dead Reckoning set up a lot of stuff that I was curious about, and I really thought we were going to get more of Ethan's backstory and answer some of those questions about his relationship with Gabriel and how he got into the IMF in the first place. And I think they just chucked all of that out when they decided to distance themselves from Dead Reckoning and make it a standalone film. So, and I can tell, I can hear in the interviews with Chris McQuarrie, the director and writer, that they were making it up kind of in the editing room, that they didn't have a version of the movie that worked. So they restructured it, they moved some stuff around, and you can tell. That's the part that bugs me, is that it could have been so much simpler, it could have been more streamlined, they could have figured it out at the screenwriting stage, rather than, because there's no way anyone would write a script that looks like this. It's the leftover pieces that have been put together, especially the beginning. The first half hour confused me, and I've seen all of the other Mission Impossible films multiple times, and I was still lost at the beginning of this one because I just think they needed to go simpler with this one. Even if they don't answer all the questions, do it John Wick style, where a lot is implied and not much is said, and people will just go with it. You don't need to explain everything. I think they needed to say less and just move on with it and be simpler. All right? So, I wish I could rank it higher, but unfortunately I cannot. Number 6, Mission Impossible 3. Mission Impossible 3 used to be my favorite of the first 3, okay? It had the best villain of the first 3 movies. It had the most action of the first 3 movies. It felt the most realistic of the first 3 movies, particularly with how they show the masks working. They explain with a logic that actually kind of holds up how their gadgets work. And it has kind of a Batman Begins vibe to it, where the first 2 Mission Impossible movies were sort of like the Tim Burton Batman movies, where just don't think too hard about how all of this actually functions, because if you do, it's going to break down. Mission Impossible 3 was more like Batman Begins in the sense that they were like, okay, how would this actually work though? Like, where do they get the voice? Where do they get the mask? How do they make it up on the fly? And the stakes are higher, and it is very exciting. Like I said, best villain of the first 3, at least. Only downside for this one, for me, is there is a point where the action starts and doesn't let up. And at the time, I really liked that, But as more Mission Impossible movies have come out and better ones have come out, I find that there's so much more to them than just action, just machine guns firing and car chases. And it's just, there's a lot. It's just a lot for the second half of this movie. So for that reason, I do kind of like, yeah, I think Mission Impossible grew beyond this at a certain point, and going back, it doesn't hold up as well. Number 5, Mission Impossible, the original Mission Impossible. The original Mission Impossible movie. There was a TV series too before that. Some people don't know that. Some people don't know that Mission Impossible was based on a TV series. And what I love about Mission Impossible, the first one, is that it starts out like an episode of the TV series. The first half hour or so is an episode of the Mission Impossible TV series. And the premise of the film seems to be, what if you did an episode of the TV show and everything goes exactly the way you expect, and then at the end of the mission, the entire team dies except for one person, and he gets blamed for it, and he goes on the run. That's the premise of the first movie. And I thought, that is so cool. Now, some of the people who die end up not being dead. So it's kind of a fake premise. But I like the idea that it's what happens when an episode of the TV show goes completely off the rails. And when I was a kid, I thought this was boring. I thought this was a slow, boring movie, which is why I gravitated toward 2 and 3 more. Again, as an adult, I've become more patient. And I have learned to love suspense, all right? And the espionage and the spycraft of it all. And, you know, the masks are a little bit silly the way they work in the first one because it's mostly just Tom Cruise with prosthetics for some of it. But yeah, I think that it has a good villain, even though at the time it was controversial because the villain, spoilers, okay? Spoilers all throughout. The villain of the movie was the main character of the TV show, and people felt betrayed by that. And they almost got the same actor from the TV show to reprise his role in the movie, but he said, no, this is not true to the character that I played. He would not do this. So they recast him. Yeah, well, the Langley Vault sequence, so great. It's got more of an Ocean's 11 vibe to it. You know, it's a heist movie. It's kind of a heist movie. So I think that it's a lot of fun. It is a little slow. It's 90s. It's of its time, as Mission Impossible 2 was very much of its time and doesn't hold up well. Mission Impossible 1, also of its time, but holds up really well as sort of a predecessor to some of the next ones that are coming out. So, number 4, Mission Impossible Fallout. Now, a lot of people think that this is one of the best ones, maybe the best one. I'm not quite there because it's a little sloppier than the other ones, at least from my perspective. I can't quite follow or remember the plot, or if I'm following it, it just seems kind of jumbled and messy to me. And it could just be my own personal experience. Other people might not feel that way when they're watching it. Henry Cavill, great character. Again, spoilers. Great villain. Henry Cavill is an awesome addition to the franchise. Short-lived, but a really great character that they threw in there. And I think that the helicopter scene is great. The defusing the bomb scene is great. Bringing Julia back is great. It gets a little bit fuzzy in my head about what's going on, and it kind of feels like it retreads a lot of the ground that was already covered in Rogue Nation. It's, you know, they bring back the main villain from Rogue Nation. I forgot his name. But they bring back the main villain from Rogue Nation. They bring back a lot of characters from Rogue Nation, and it just kind of feels like Rogue Nation Part 2. And it just kind of, I don't know. It's the stunt, the big stunt. Well, there's the helicopter chase at the end. But the other big stunt is them doing a halo jump through a thunderstorm, which is cool. But there's so much CGI that they add to it that I don't really see the real stunt. It doesn't feel real to me when I'm watching it. So that kind of bums me out a little bit. But still, very solid Mission Impossible movie. It's just there are a couple other ones that are a little bit better. All right, so these last three, I don't know. It's a very close race. I'm gonna say number 3 is Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Today. All right. Number 3 today is Ghost Protocol. That being said, even though I don't think it's the best Mission Impossible movie, if I were going to show only one Mission Impossible movie to someone who had never seen a Mission Impossible movie before, I would show them Ghost Protocol, because it is the pinnacle of what Mission Impossible is. And that might be confusing because it's like, well, hang on. If there are 2 other Mission Impossible movies that are better than this one, how could this be the pinnacle? And I just mean it's like the archetype. It's the mold that the other ones break out of. But this is the most archetypal Mission Impossible movie from beginning to end. Like, this is how, other than the fact that their gadgets break and they're a rogue agency that is operating after the IMF has been shut down, this is pretty much how their missions are supposed to go. And it's beginning, middle, and end, a perfect example of what a Mission Impossible movie should be. It's funny. The team is great. It's got Jeremy Renner in it. And I think that even the storyline is pulled from the TV series, which they did twice, actually. It was in the original series and the 80s reboot. And they did it again, where they have to change the numbers on a hotel and arrange a meeting by having person A meet with person B while person C is meeting with person D, and they think they're meeting with each other, but they didn't really do that. They kind of do that more like over the phone, I think, on the TV show. But it's very much pulled straight out of the TV series and blown up huge. And of course, climbing the tallest building in the world. Such a great sequence. I would show that to anyone who wants to know what Mission Impossible is all about. Only downside to this one, I think, is the villain is not very memorable or charismatic, which is definitely a screenwriting problem, because Chris McQuarrie, no, he didn't make that one. Sorry, no. It's a screenplay problem. But Brad Bird, he's written good villains before in The Incredibles. Written? No, directed. Sorry, directed. Brad Bird directed The Incredibles. So it's not a directing problem. And it's not an acting problem, because the actor who plays the villain in Ghost Protocol was great as the villain of John Wick. All right? And I didn't realize it was him until I went back to Ghost Protocol after seeing John Wick. I'm like, hey, that's the guy from John Wick. And why doesn't he have more to do in this movie? And it's just they didn't give him enough to do in the script. That's the problem. So, yeah, that's the weakest aspect of it, especially coming right off of Mission Impossible 3, where Philip Seymour Hoffman had such a great villain to play. They just gave this guy nothing in the 4th one. All right, so number 2. Again, close race here. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. This one, I feel, even though Ghost Protocol is like the archetypal, perfect example of a Mission Impossible film, Rogue Nation just refines that a little bit, and it's just a little bit more interesting. It's a little bit darker. It's more James Bondy. It's more spy-like. It's a thriller. It's a spy thriller, not necessarily like a Mission Impossible film, but it's a spy film. And it's got that scene at the opera. It's got a lot of great humor. And one of the best things about it is that we get Jeremy Renner and Ving Rhames together, all right? Together in the same car on the same mission. And Ghost Protocol has Jeremy Renner and just a little cameo from Ving Rhames. And most of the other ones have Ving Rhames, but no Jeremy Renner. This is the only one where they work together, and they work so well together because it's like Ethan's old friend meeting his new friend, and they don't really get along. They're like Bucky and Sam Wilson in the Captain America movies. It's Steve's old friend and Steve's new friend meeting each other, and they're kind of, antagonistic and jealous of each other, but eventually learn to be friends. So, yeah, Rogue Nation. And it's got better mask stuff. That was the other thing about Ghost Protocol, is that they didn't get to use full masks, and they lampshade it by having Simon Pegg talk about how, oh, I wish we were wearing masks, like full masks, and they never get to do it. So what I love about Rogue Nation is that they got me. They got me. When I saw it in the theater the first time, they fooled me. There are a couple times where somebody pulls off a mask. I'm like, of course. Of course that's what this was. And it's just such a great spy movie. And it's a great example of a Mission Impossible movie that's been elevated and a great villain. Solomon Lane, that's his name. That's the name of the villain. Solomon Lane. Such a great, just scary villain, almost like a Hannibal Lecter vibe. He's got charisma. He's got a threat to him. And the idea that he's the leader of the Syndicate, which is also from the TV show. They completely change it, but the name, the Syndicate, is from the TV show. And it's an anti-IMF, and how they flip the script and have the little message at the beginning where they give Ethan his mission. It's been hijacked by the Syndicate, and it's just, it's so good. It's like The Empire Strikes Back. It's, if Star Wars is what the archetypal Star Wars story is, A New Hope, then Empire Strikes Back is a complete subversion of that. And that's what happened here, where Ghost Protocol is the perfect example of a Mission Impossible film, and Rogue Nation just kind of turns it upside down a little bit and subverts your expectations and gives it a twist. So you have to see what came before to appreciate that in its entirety. Oh, and the airplane sequence at the beginning. That's great. And Simon Pegg is great in that scene too. We're like, yes, the package is on the plane, we know. It's so great. I love Rogue Nation. That one's almost the best. Sometimes it is the best. Depends on what day of the week it is. But for now, number 1, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, formerly known as Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Really embarrassing the way that they did that in the actual movie, because what really bummed me out about that is what a big deal they made out of the fact that it was Part 1, to the point where the end credits begin with End Part 1, as if you're supposed to like grab another disc or something like that. It's almost like one of those messages that self-destruct. It's like, here's part 1 of this important spy document, and that's end of part 1. Now go grab part 2, put it in, and see the rest of this report. They do it in kind of a spy thriller type format. And it's just really embarrassing that they like, oh gosh, part 1 of 1, I guess. So, but good that they distanced it for marketing reasons, that Final Reckoning needed to do better than Dead Reckoning Part 1. So it makes sense that they wouldn't market it as Part 2, because then for sure it would lose money. Now it's only maybe going to lose money. So this one I put on top, and it's a little bit dampened now that I know that they're not going to pay off some of that stuff that they set up in Dead Reckoning. So Dead Reckoning really had me hooked and made me want to know what was going to happen next. And they didn't answer a lot of those questions when we got to the Final Reckoning. So that's why it was so disappointing to go from so high to so low from my perspective. I feel like they kind of dropped the ball narratively. But even as a standalone movie that, albeit, ends on a cliffhanger, Dead Reckoning has so many memorable sequences in it. And the entity, which is also a threat in Final Reckoning, actually has a personality and is very sinister and kind of communicates with Benji through this fake nuclear bomb, and it's kind of a trickster, and it fools people into blowing themselves up, and it talks to Ethan as Benji and gets him to go the wrong way when he needs to get somewhere crucial. And it just seemed like the entity had a personality, and that's almost completely gone in the Final Reckoning. And the villain, the human villain, Gabriel, also seemed to have a personality and a presence in Dead Reckoning that's almost completely absent from the Final Reckoning. And it's odd how different they are. It kind of makes sense that they would change it up a little bit, but I love the fact that they recruit Grace, and we get to see what the beginning of an IMF agent's journey looks like, which we've never seen before, to my knowledge. We get to see how they get in and become a spy. And we get hints of how it happened to Ethan, and we see how it happens to Grace. And I thought there was going to be a passing of the torch, a much more final passing of the torch in the Final Reckoning, and they didn't. They kind of chickened out at the last minute. But yeah, I really thought they were setting Haley Atwell up to be the new lead, but they didn't. They couldn't get there. So, but the Final Reckoning, Dead Reckoning, sorry. Dead Reckoning has so many memorable sequences. I was so shocked that after only seeing it once and then waiting a couple of years to watch it again, I remembered every sequence in that movie. I was like, okay, this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. Am I missing anything? No, I remember every sequence in that first part, that Dead Reckoning movie, because it's so engaging. The submarine sequence at the beginning, the airport thing where they keep scrambling up his face to hide him from other IMF agents who are trying to bring him in, and the fake nuclear bomb in the airport, and the nightclub scene, and the bridge scene, and the cliff jump, and the train sequence. It was all memorable. It was all so memorable. And in the opening right before the credits, when Ethan always goes rogue, except in Mission Impossible 2. I think Mission Impossible 2 is the only one where he actually does the job that he's supposed to do. But he goes rogue in every movie. And does it in record time in Dead Reckoning. Before the credits even roll, he has gone rogue. And it's just awesome. And they explain more about how the IMF works. They have a little exposition scene at the beginning where they talk about how the IMF operates within the government. And they have to explain to somebody, what, you just leave a message for this guy and hope that he does it? And that's how it works. So there's just so much going on in this one, and it's very emotional. I actually, this is the only one where I really feel the weight of the emotion, where they make me fall in love with certain characters, and then things don't end up well. I know I'm spoiling things here, but I'm trying to, I'm going to keep this a little bit vague, but there are certain characters where they ain't going to make it, and it's kind of sad. And you really feel it. You feel how much that hurts Ethan. And I think that more than any other Mission Impossible movie, Dead Reckoning really hits Ethan in the heart. And you can feel it. You can feel it. It's emotional. It's not just technical. It's not just about the stunts. Even though the stunts are great, particularly the one, jumping the motorcycle off the cliff thing. But there's humor, there's fun, all the stuff that's not in the Final Reckoning. The team working together, having Simon Pegg in his ear while he's doing crazy stuff. Yeah, it's just, I think that was the best it ever got. Again, that could change next week. But, only downside to that one is that it is pretty long and it retreads a little bit the first movie, where it's another train thing at the end, but that's supposed to happen. It's supposed to come back to the beginning. But it really felt like an impossible mission, all right? It really felt like they have this AI. They can predict everything they're going to do before they do it. It was the most I ever felt the title Mission Impossible applied to a film. So that's it. Those are my rankings for now. I'm a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. I've only seen The Final Reckoning once, so maybe I won't next time judge it by what I thought it was going to be, but judge it on its own merits, and that might change how I feel about it. Because the first impression was very different from what I was expecting. So now that I know what I'm getting, maybe it'll go better the next time. But till now, these are my rankings. Till now. Till then, for now, these are my rankings. And yeah, we'll see how it goes in the future. Maybe we'll get another Mission Impossible movie in a couple of years. Maybe they'll let it rest for a decade or so. We'll find out. It'll probably be back. Of course it'll be back. Tom Cruise will just be the mentor. He'll make a cameo or something. So that's it. How do I end these things? I forget. I'm Trevor Meyer. This is the Trevor Meyer Show. If you have any comments, if you want to put your own rankings down below and kind of explain your thoughts on why certain things, because the ranking itself is kind of boring. I could just throw the list up here. But the why, when you make these movies compete against each other, that's when the discussion really gets going. And that's when you can get into the nitty gritty and really discuss what it is about these movies you like, what do you dislike. And, it's just a fun discussion to see if we're on the same page here. So that being said, like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you next time. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.